Welcome back. Nobody disputes that housing has become unaffordable in Canada, but is there a relatively easy fix that's being ignored? Here's a look by the numbers. Housing starts, or shovels in the ground, fell 11% in March from February. The 213,000 units was below expectations. The big drop was in single detached homes in cities, down 16%, while multifamily units rose 11% to just over 150,000. A look at housing starts over time show that while they are down from a huge pandemic peak, they are above the 10-year average, a reflection of a lot of effort to get more homes built. Meanwhile, building permits, which tell us about future plans, soared in March, up 11%. But it was driven by non-residential building, which hit a record. Permits to build housing actually fell almost 1% in the month. Prices that rose sharply during pandemic have come back down slightly. The annual house price index shows the price gains are back to the long-term mean. But according to the CD Howe, the high price of homes is driven in part by regulations that get in the way of homes being built. In Vancouver, $1.3 million can be tacked onto the price beyond what it costs to build. In Toronto, barriers to new supply add $350,000 to the price of a home. Some of the barriers identified include upfront fees for developers and a lack of targets or enforcement on density. Benjamin Dachis is the author of that CD Howe research on the added costs to homes from friction in the market, and he joins us now. Great to have you with us, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me on the show.
So just for perspective, I mean, in Toronto, that $350,000 adds a third more to the price of a home, right? The average price is somewhere around $1 million. That's a sizable number of things that you're identifying as removable, things that don't have to be there. That's not the brick and mortar cost of putting that thing together. When you look at the list, what do you see as sort of the low-hanging fruit that we could do, policymakers could do, to actually speed up the process of getting more supply?
Perfect. And it's even higher in the Vancouver area, over half. So let's look at some of the policies. First and foremost, especially in the Greater Toronto area, are the upfront fees that cities charge to home builders, which just get passed on to home buyers. And they're upwards of $100,000 or more in some places in the GTA for things like water services or other municipal services. And when you step back and think about it, these upfront fees don't make a lot of sense. We don't ask home buyers to pay for their home all up front. We have them take out a mortgage. If we ask people to pay for all their infrastructure over time rather than all up front, that would reduce the cost substantially. Those upfront fees could be embedded in their long-term user fees. Every time you flush your toilet or turn on your sink, that you can pay part of your capital cost then rather than all up front.
We have seen those fees be the target, right? In Ontario, there is a new bill in place that's aimed at trying to speed up construction. Municipalities will say, Benjamin, that costs them too much money, that they rely on those fees to help build out the infrastructure to support new housing. Is there not a case to be made there?
Yeah, we all have to pay for things. So what we need to be thinking about, though, is what's the right way to pay for these things. So I would suggest we break them out between fees for charges for things that can be fee supported, and then charges for things that don't make sense to have as fee supported. Things like police and fire, we'll get back to those. But for things like water and wastewater, we're paying for that through our water fees. What we're suggesting here is rather than, again, take that capital cost that's all up front and putting onto new home buyers, and it's for a lot of assets that are shared across the entire region for existing home buyers, for existing homeowners as well. We should take some of that capital cost, and rather than have that debt effectively held by homeowners in their higher mortgage payments, the cities could be taking this on in terms of their own expenditure, or allowing more equity investment. There are pension funds that operate water and wastewater services. Canadian pension funds, for example, operate them in, say, the United Kingdom.
Right.
We'd have that model. That's a great system. It's going to reduce costs in the system, and then spread those costs over time when people actually are using their water.
I do want to hit, so another way of thinking about how we're literally pricing and paying for things, I do want to hit something else, and that is density targets and actually holding municipalities to account on them. In a way, upping density will mean lower fees. It'll mean lower profit, right? The supply and demand picture has worked for developers for a long time. Are we okay with that? Just saying, let's just build so that we can actually meet the market, even though it might mean profit goes down.
Yeah, we need to build both up and out. There is so much demand for housing that we do need to see increase in density. What we saw in the city of Toronto is a great start. We saw what happened yesterday, at least on May 10th, is that the city council passed a bylaw that any plot in the city of Toronto is automatically zoned for four units. That's a great start. But what about the rest of the GTA? We need to see increased density there. We need to see. We also need to see growing upward because, as you just mentioned, it's single detached homes that people are really looking for, and that's a big part of the market that we need to expand. And so, growing our boundaries out is an important part of that. And we've seen some battles of this in say Hamilton, and this is completely separate from the Greenbelt. It's worth emphasizing.
Right.
We're talking about land here that has been targeted for development in a provincial plans. And cities need to be approving, or should be approving, the proposals to expand our urban growth boundaries incrementally to take what would be otherwise farmland that could be developable and turn it into housing. That's going to reduce our housing costs, and it's going to increase the supply of housing. That to me is the first place I'd be looking to grow.
Benjamin, great to have you. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on.
Benjamin Dachis is Associate VP Public Affairs at the C.D. Howe Institute. Well, when it comes to density, urban infill is often used as the easiest route. Underutilized space in our cities that could house more people. It's what Happi Builds aims to do, and it promises to be sustainable as it does it. Matt Soloway is the CEO of Happi Builds. Thanks for being with us, Matt.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Amanda.
So you're going after a part of the market that's pretty hot right now in big cities. I know certainly in Toronto, and that is the idea of that garden suite. You've got sort of a prefab model. Walk through what your proposal is. What does Happi Builds do?
Great. Well, we're obviously in a housing crisis, and the provincial government's aiming to build 1.5 million new homes in the next 10 years. So with this new bylaw for garden suites and laneway houses allowing backyard housing, we've really set ourselves up to take advantage of what we see as a huge trend, really following what's happened in California. And having had a chance to see what's happened there, we've set ourselves up in the prefab model to be able to really be a best friend to property owners and to help people every step of the way, to provide a full concierge service, working specifically with climate-friendly prefabricated backyard housing options. So
How big do you think this market is for you? Do you have estimates on that, of just what the potential size of it is?
we think it's significant. In Toronto alone, there's about 500,000 properties that are eligible for backyard housing. And with 60,000 permitted backyard houses in the last few years in California, we see the trend really rolling out in Toronto and then through the rest of Ontario and the country. So we do think it's a significant opportunity.
Of course, we're seeing a lot of the policy changes going this direction, right, Matt? We just saw, as Benjamin Dachis just said, the City of Toronto is changing its rules on, how many units can be in a residential home. However, you will still see neighborhoods pushing back. Some neighborhoods will not want laneway houses, garden suites. Some will. What's the plan to get around NIMBYism, the not in my backyard kind of reaction you might see?
So we're working with very high-end and proven architects and designers to actually build backyard houses that we feel are going to fit into the neighborhoods they're being put into, and most importantly, look great. So our biggest goal is to be like user-friendly, climate-friendly, but also designer-focused so that they can fit right into neighborhoods, and then tear down on the how people really support this, because they're both going to be practical in terms of solving housing crisis, but also look great and fit right into people's backyards.
So this is a relatively new venture. How long before you're ready to start putting prefab garden suites, laneway suites together?
We're starting right away. We've just launched and we've started our sales in the last few weeks. So we're super excited. We have a wait list and we're starting to get out and meet with homeowners that are interested in learning more about the prefab units that we have. So we're ready to hit the ground running.
Probably a pretty busy time for you. We appreciate your time, Matt.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Matt Soloway is the CEO of Happi Builds. Still ahead, a breakthrough product for how businesses use their communication systems. But first, after 40 years in business, weight loss chain Jenny Craig has filed for bankruptcy, leaving about $320 million owed to creditors in Canada, and perhaps offering the latest sign of the shift in the weight loss business. On the one hand, a new way of thinking about health that frowns upon prescribed ideas of the right weight, but also, on the other hand, one in which new drugs may undermine old-school techniques to lose weight. There's a pill for that now. Either way, it's so long, Jenny Craig. We're back after this.